There's one simple strategy that lets some musicians make the sort of progress in months that takes others years. Science has shown that it doubles your learning speed, and I've used it to help over 15,000 students finally break through plateaus and feel truly proud of their playing. So in this video, I'll show you exactly how to add this technique into your own practice. But if this different method of learning music has been shown to be at least twice as effective, then why doesn't everyone use it? Think about cramming for an exam. You stay up late, memorize everything, and feel like a genius until you wake up the next day and can barely remember a thing. And that's an example of what I call an instant results method. It feels fantastic in the moment, but the progress disappears overnight. And exactly the same thing happens with music practice. Research shows that the best way to learn is actually counterintuitive. The methods that leave you feeling like you've improved massively by the end of a session simply don't stick. When tomorrow rolls around, you're right back where you started. While slower methods, where you feel like you're getting nowhere on the day itself, those are actually the key to rapid progress that lasts. This chart shows what's happening. Notice how the instant results way gives you a quick spike in progress with each practice session, but that vanishes again straight away, while the lasting results method starts slower, but each session builds on the last and your skills grow stronger and stronger. But what is this game-changing way to learn then? Brace yourself, because it's so simple that most people ignore it. Stop and test yourself regularly. No, really, that's it. Not keep playing until your fingers fall off, but actually pause for a while, then see what you're still able to do later. Incredible though it sounds, the science shows that just one self-test, if it's done in the right way, can double your progress compared to just repeating stuff over and over. And yes, you heard that right, twice as much progress. That's not a mistake, it's been backed up by loads of different research studies. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to fill a leaky bucket. If you just keep pouring water in, and that's your brute force repetition, the bucket is going to fill up nice and quickly until you come back tomorrow and it's empty again. But if you stop and check for leaks, plugging the holes as you go, and that's what testing yourself does, suddenly the water stays. You may not have filled the bucket as much in the moment, but you actually keep that progress. So the key change is to stop thinking that learning music is all about getting things into your brain. What matters even more is to minimize how much leaks out again later. And it turns out that this requires a completely different approach. And this isn't just for remembering facts. Nope, this has been shown to work just as well for motor skills like playing music. And better still, it doesn't even matter if you screw up the test. You still get the benefits, just as long as you follow up the right way. And don't worry, I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So next time you practice, don't just grind and hope for the best. Stop. Test yourself. Because the research shows over and over again that testing is not just about proving what you know. It's far and away the best tool for learning. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Mark, but how do I actually use this without turning practice into a pop quiz nightmare? Well, it's easy. First, I'll give you 3 dead simple rules to make it work, and then I'll hand you some plug and play recipes you can drop straight into your next practice session. All right, let's start by settling the question of how much you should actually test yourself. Is more better, or are you just torturing yourself for nothing? Here's what the scientists did. They took 3 groups of people and gave them a challenge. Group 1 hit the books 4 times, 0 tests, just endless review. Group 2 studied 3 times and then took 1 test. And Group 3 studied only once and then got given 3 tests. And then everyone faced the final big scary test. So who did best? It wasn't the ones who studied the most. In fact, the winners were the ones who tested themselves the most and therefore studied the least. Simply put, more tests equals better results. And a really surprising finding was that it didn't matter if people aced those practice tests or totally screwed them up. As long as they were able to check their answers afterwards, their brains leveled up way more regardless. Think of it like this. If you want to get stronger, you don't just watch workout videos. You actually have to sweat, fail, and try again. Every repetition counts, even the ugly ones. So once you've been exposed to the original material and paying suitable amounts of focus and attention, you have to do that, Then, what matters is that you test yourself, then test yourself again and again. And that is how you lock in real progress for good, no matter what you're learning. Now, what about when to test yourself? Here's what the science says. Once you've been exposed to material for the first time, you want to test yourself sooner rather than later, but not instantly. Why? Because if you test yourself immediately, it's still sitting in your short-term muscle memory. That's like checking if you remember your phone number while you're still looking at it. Of course you do. So you want to give your brain just enough time for a little bit of forgetting to sneak in. Think of it like baking bread. You can't just shove it in the oven right after you mix the dough. You have to let it rise a bit. If you rush, you get a flat loaf. But wait too long and it goes stale. It's the same with learning. Let your brain rest, then hit it with a test before it goes completely cold. So what does this look like in real life? After you first work on something new, test yourself later the same day. Then, as you get better, start stretching out the gap. Wait a full day, then maybe 2, and then longer. And remember, just repeating something over and over is not testing. Real testing means you have to struggle to recall the answer, and whether that answer is a fact or a set of muscle movements or anything else. Now, repetition increases your familiarity with the material, but it does nothing to improve your mastery of it. You'll recognize it more easily when you see it, but you're not building the ability to reproduce it on demand. In just a minute, I'll show you exactly how to set up these tests in your own practice. But first, we still need to ask, how hard should the tests actually be? And the science is clear that effective learning happens when these tests feel genuinely challenging and uncomfortable, but not to the point where they're impossible. The sweet spot is when you're getting things right about 8 times out of 10. And that's right. If you're nailing everything, you're not growing. And if you're failing constantly, you're just getting frustrated. But if you're hitting that Goldilocks just tough enough zone, boom, that's when your brain is firing on all cylinders. And don't stress about mistakes. Getting things wrong 2 times out of 10 isn't just okay, it actually speeds up your learning, as long as you check the right answers after each test. And a quick note here, this 80% rule is for learning new material. If you're prepping for a big performance, then you will want to be practically perfect every time. Alright, let's pull all this together and build a plan you can use in your next practice session. Think of this like circuit training for your brain. Rapid fire, no wasted time, and guaranteed to make your progress stick. Here's how you're going to do it. Pick 2 or 3 new things to work on. Let's call them A, B, and C. Practice A in your normal way for 5 to 10 minutes. Then do the same with B, and then C. No testing yet. You're just getting your hands a bit dirty with each one. And now, to finish the session, test yourself on A by simply playing it through once. But do it totally cold. No trial runs, no looking at the music or notes to remind yourself, and no stopping and starting again. And then do the same for B and C. Why does this work? Because by the time you come back to each topic, your brain has had to juggle other stuff. So it's a true test of what's stuck, not just grabbing onto something that's still floating around in your short-term memory. And here's how the whole thing looks. Practice A, B, and then C, then test yourself on A, B, and then C. Job done. This structure quickly, simply, and automatically hits the big rule of testing yourself shortly after grappling with the material for the first time. The key thing to remember is to check what you got right or wrong after each test. If you're memorizing, it's obvious how to do that. But if you're working on something technical though, like accuracy, expression, or that sort of thing, then make a quick note during practice of what helps, like relax your hand or use that weird fingering. Don't look at those notes before you test, but check afterwards if you remembered your own best advice. And if any test feels way too easy or way too hard, tweak your practice or your test next time to hit that sweet spot. But you won't always be working with totally new material. So how do you do this with stuff you already know? Well, simply add another cold test section to the start of your practice. If any big issues trip you up, use part of your session to practice those rough spots. But if it's all good, then give it a few days before testing again. And remember, you want to hit that sweet spot, getting it right about 8 out of 10 times. If your tests are too easy or too tough, then tweak things accordingly. And there are all sorts of creative ways to do this, but here are a few quick suggestions that you might like to play about with. Change the rhythms. For example, a classic is to turn everything into dotted rhythms so your brain has to work harder. Put it in the right context. So when you start out, test things as small, separate chunks. And once that's easy, play bigger sections. And then teach it to someone else. Teaching skills to others is a real test and a great way to develop mastery. But I've got to warn you about something. When you practice this way, it will probably feel horribly wrong. Research shows that people who just repeat things feel confident, super confident, but they don't actually improve much, while the ones who test themselves feel less sure of themselves, even as their skills are actually soaring. So it's normal to doubt whether it's working. So stick with it through the struggle and trust that what you're doing has been proven to be the right thing. The only catch is you've got to be sure you're not making one of the common practice mistakes that will stop your progress dead in its tracks. So watch this video next where I show you exactly what those critical mistakes are and how to avoid them.